Being a politician means listening, not just to your supporters, but your critics too. Zoran, go back to Uganda, where you come from and belong. There are thousands like this from across the country. I hear you, and I agree. I'm going back to Uganda. I'm headed there in a personal capacity to celebrate Rama and I's marriage with our family and friends. But I do want to apologize to the haters, because I will be coming back.
Is going to Uganda to celebrate, what is her name? Zohan and I's wedding. That's improper grammar. Zohan and I's wedding? And I's wedding? No. But listen to this, because, the Democrats, they're very, very angry that federal law enforcement now feel it necessary to wear, in some circumstances, face masks to protect their identities. Because thanks to the Democrat Party and every Democrat in America, we now have thousands and thousands, nay, tens of thousands of foreign gang members, cartel members, Venezuelan gang members, Mexican gang members from all over the world, and that these people are known for hunting down and killing law enforcement and their families in Mexico, for example, but never mind that. Aren't they amazing? And the masks, the Democrats are always very angry about the masks.
No more masked federal agents in our community. Only the bad guys wear masks.
They're Democrats because they're unbelievable. And the Democrat members of Congress are angry about law enforcement wearing masks, and the news media are angry about because they're trying to not get murdered.
I never saw any of them wear masks. This is brand new, and the question is, if everything is legitimate and proper, why are you wearing masks to hide your face?
Well, it's been explained 30 or 40 times, but your tiny, corrupt little squirrel brain, apparently incapable of learning at this advanced age. Here is the New York Post, because they actually covered the story about Zoran Mamdani going to Uganda to marry his beloved bride, who's a man. And I just made up the who's a man part. That's but it could be, certainly. Except maybe not in Uganda, because then everybody have to be mowed down with machine gun fire. Inside socialist Zoran Mamdani's posh wedding bash at secluded Uganda compound, complete with phone jamming system, armed guards. Wait a minute, you couldn't use your cell phones because they didn't want suicide bombs to be detonated remotely using cell phones, so they jammed, scrambled, shut down the cell phone system there in Uganda, and the armed guards. But wait, there's more. Socialist New York City mayoral frontrunner Zoran Mamdani celebrated his recent nuptials with a lavish 3-day affair at his family's ritzy, secluded Ugandan compound, complete with, hang on now, masked security guards, with rifles and very third world, very ooga booga, right? Complete with masked security guards and cell phone jamming system, the New York Post has learned. The gates of the bustling private compound, wait a minute, this is his family, but he's a man of the people, and he's from Africa, and he's Ugandan, and he's not really. His father loved Idi Amin or something, so he moved to Uganda. And old Zoran here, who wants to pretend that he's all kinds of things that he's not, and then pretend that he's not all kinds of things that he is. Zoran lived in Uganda for a couple of years as a baby. Then they moved to South Africa for a couple of years. By the time he was 7 years old, he was living on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and his mother is making major Hollywood motion pictures, while his corrupt father, who's not Ugandan either, neither one of his parents Ugandan, but never mind that, was being a college professor because, So the gates of the bustling private compound, which sits in the wealthy Buziga Hill. It's Buziga Hill. The Buziga Hill area outside of the capital of Kampala, were heavily guarded by military-style masked men this week, with guests streaming in and partying until midnight. Of according to sources in the town who wish to remain anonymous for security reasons because they don't want to be murdered, right? Mamdani, the Democrat, the socialist, the anti-Western, genocidal, anti-Semite Jew hater. Mamdani, 33 years old, eloped. That's not eloping, right? With artist animator Rama Duwaji, who's 27 years old. Rama Duwaji. They eloped in February. Okay, so that was eloping in February. He told his social media followers Sunday he was headed to his homeland. It's not really his homeland. He lived there for like 3 years when he was a baby. His homeland, and his father is not Ugandan and his mother is not Ugandan, but you can call it his homeland if you want, to celebrate with his wealthy filmmaker mom and professor dad who owns the Buziga Hill property. Sure, because, he loved the Idi Amin days when cannibalism was all the rage. So the neighborhood is home to some of Uganda's richest, including billionaire businessman Godfrey Kiramira. He's Kuramira, a city tycoon with stakes in real estate, tourism, petroleum, and infrastructure. I'm sure he's not corrupt or anything. And houses neighboring the Mamdanis easily fetch more than $1 million. So $1 million in Uganda. It's not Washington, D.C., a $1 million house. It's Uganda. It's a compound with fences and gates and armed security with rifles wearing masks. But wait a minute. No walls for us. No gates for us. No masks for us. But for him, the home is set back from the road, sits on 2 acres of lush gardens surrounded by trees, has breathtaking panoramic views of Lake Victoria, and features at least 3 security gates. This week, it was transformed into a party pad with Christmas lights strung to they've got canopies, and they got the Christmas lights and all kinds of lavish stuff. Canopy of trees, the gardens, blaring music. On Tuesday, buses, several Mercedes and Range Rovers were seen driving into the compound. But the masked armed guards have to let you in past the walls and the gates so that you can party there. Security was extremely tight. Outside the Mamdani house were more than 20 special forces. They had command unit guards, the special forces, with the government. Some in masks. There was a phone jamming system set up. All of it strictly invite only. The Mamdani event. They couldn't be bigger hypocrites. Third world, banana republic, dead body eaten lunatics. Just amazing. One gate had around 9 guards stationed at it. And here's a picture. They're African military in camouflage with rifles and maroon berets, because that's it. So Mamdani's parents, Nair, 67, and her husband, Mahmoud Mamdani, 78, an anti-Israel political theorist, live on the estate, but also split their time between New York City in the United States and New Delhi in India, because they're not rich, and they're real regular socialists, Nair's Instagram page, which includes hair removal tips, because Nair. One post featuring a coconut tree, planted when Mamdani was born. A native of Kampala, Mamdani moved to New York when he was 7. Can't really say he's a native. When he was 7, he moved to New York. First, they lived in South Africa for a while before moving to New York, so he wasn't even in Uganda until he was 7. Becoming a U.S. citizen in 2018, announced his marriage to Duwaji, an illustrator, earlier this year. Oh, listen to this. The pair met on the dating app. They met on a dating app called Hinge. They're unhinged. And now share a rent-stabilized apartment in Astoria, Queens, New York. So they got their rich private jet, private compound, armed guards, masks, all that stuff. but they live in a rent-controlled apartment in New York, so they don't have to pay their fair share, pay the fair going rate. Aren't they amazing? Man, oh man. Isn't it great? The travelers enjoying the lush wedding, they enjoyed fruit juices. Be careful with the fruit juices in Uganda. I'm telling you, because of the water and things. There was lots of dancing, a DJ, all kinds of good stuff, and it was a secret. One witness reported making out the New York City Democrat mayoral nominee's voice on a microphone addressing the guests later that night, party ending after midnight. This is your Democrat Party. They are a third world party. They're not a first world Western party anymore. They're really not. Womp, womp, womp. The Queens Assemblyman running for mayor, the Democrat nominee for mayor of New York City, said in an Instagram video that he would stay in Uganda until the end of the month. Now, wait a minute. Am I wrong, or because Republicans get in all kinds of trouble if they go somewhere, don't they? I mean, if Marco Rubio goes on vacation, and if anybody, these people, can I just say, they couldn't be bigger hypocrites if they set out to become bigger hypocrites. That's their goal, to become bigger hypocrites. Just extraordinary stuff. These people. Man, oh man. And I love this story because this is crazy. But anyway, where did Marco Rubio go? And where did he go? He went to Mexico or something. Oh, Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz went on vacation and he got in all kinds of trouble and yeah, because it got cold in Texas, right? Yeah, that's right. Aren't they amazing? Yes, they are. Man, oh man. This story is one that should be all over the news, but isn't, and that is that the madman that stabbed, where did he stab 11 people at a Walmart in Michigan, Traverse City, Michigan, and it turns out that this guy has a history of digging up dead bodies at a cemetery and dismembering the bodies because he was convinced that there were live people in the caskets buried deep under the ground. And in his mind, they were in there screaming and scratching and trying to get out. So he digged them. When he found they were really dead, he just dismembered them. And that guy was loose on the streets. Shouldn't come as a surprise. The man accused of stabbing 11 people at a Walmart in Traverse City in Michigan has a long history of mental illness that included treatment after he was charged 9 years ago with digging up and mutilating dead bodies at a Petoskey cemetery in Michigan. Bradford Gill files show at Emmett County Probate Center. He's been treated for mental illness dating back to 1998. I got to tell you, President Trump, one of the things President Trump is talking about, and I'm all in favor of this, and combating the homelessness, because almost all homeless people are mentally ill and or addicted to drugs and things. And we used to have institutions where we would put mentally ill people. Now we throw them out on the sidewalk to fall asleep in a storefront and to commit crimes and steal stuff to stay alive because they're not capable of taking care of themselves. And then when they die, then first responders go and scoop up their dead bodies and take them away. And that's the solution. I've been talking about this for years, by the way. And now President Trump is talking about actually doing something about homelessness, working with Republican governors and mayors to say, what are we going to do so there aren't mentally ill, crazy people screaming at your children and terrorizing your grandmother and then falling asleep in the storefront across the street from you? Well, okay, across the street from me. And we've had homeless people in our neighborhood for as long as we live. We named some of them. There was Smudge. Smudge lived in a storefront across the street from us for years and years. And over time, he was wearing my boots because I gave him my boots. He was wearing my black leather jacket because winter came and it was cold, and I gave him my black leather jacket. We'd bring him Thanksgiving dinner, and then they'd keep the silverware and stuff. And so that was Smudge. And And we found out that he called himself Carl or Carlo or Carlos. He was never sure which. And then he stopped showing up. I assume he met a tragic fate on the sidewalk there, and I didn't witness it. And then when he left, a new guy showed up, a white guy with a long beard from Canada, and he said, a lot, and a long beard, and he was crazy, and he lived in that storefront. And his name was Stain, because he sat against the brick wall there across the street from us, and he sat there all day long, and when he got up and walked away, there was a stain there where he was, so his nickname became Stain, and that was on the same block as Smudge and Stain, and we gave him stuff all the time and everything. They needed help, but in our culture, we find mentally ill people, and until they murder somebody or go to a Walmart and stab 11 people, hey, look, all he did was dig up graves at a cemetery and mutilate the bodies. Why would that be a problem? But Donald Trump is talking about doing something about homelessness, and I think that's a good idea. I think they'd be better off in a mental institution, even though the snake pits that the government runs, bad. You know that big wireless is pulling one over on all of us. It's time to make the switch to consumer cellular. I made the switch, and listen, I get the same fast, reliable, nationwide big wireless coverage without the big wireless cost, the money. It's not just about saving money on my bill, of course. It's about not being used and abused by the big cell phone companies. Do you even know how much data you use every month? Probably not. I don't. Most people over 50 use less than 8 gigs of data in a month. But big wireless companies, they shove you into an unlimited plan and they make you pay big money to cover the cost of younger people who use a lot more data than you do. It's redistribution of data cost. And if you're not using all that data, then you're the one being used. I'd had enough of all that. Went with Consumer Cellular. They set me up with a service and a phone, beautiful phone, taking pictures in Iceland with that phone. And it's really easy to switch. All you do is you call, and listen to this, you speak to an actual human being, not a robot, based right here in the United States, not on a space platform. Real human beings who are helpful. Only takes about 20 minutes to make the switch. You'll thank me later. Give them a call today and make the switch. 1-800-760-0702. That's 800-760-0702. Yes, sir. Yeah, the homeless thing, yeah. Yeah, because this guy, he's a crazy person, and he's loose on the streets. And then he stabbed 11 people in Michigan at a Walmart because he was loose. Why was he loose? Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. While I was gone on the annual Chris Plant Sea Cruise with great Americans in Iceland, President Trump signed an executive order about homelessness, ending crime and disorder on America's streets. The executive order is titled, and it was not signed with an auto pen. The Democrats want mentally ill people to die on the streets. That's coming up. All right, so President Trump, while I was gone on the annual sea cruise, one of my many, many vacation weeks, what is it, 13 weeks? Not really. But President Trump signed an executive order titled Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Streets. And the Democrats, including the news media, are very angry about this. Now, I was going back and forth with Seton Motley on this, my friend Seton Motley on this. And he said, well, yeah, the Cato Institute says that they've studied homelessness in America, and the numbers are all over the place, but say more than 700,000 people are categorized as homeless in the United States. That's like the population of Washington, D.C., and a remarkable number. The Cato Institute says that 40% of homeless people have mental health, mental illness issues, right? They're crazy. 40% of homeless people are crazy, and they can't manage to, live a normal life and a place to stay, and that nobody in their family will take them in. And they already have, and they've been through it, and they've exhausted everything. So 40% of homeless people are crazy. 30%, Cato Institute says, addicted to drugs, whatever it may be, your meth, your crack. Like not everybody is lucky enough to be Hunter Biden. 30% addicted, and it might be alcoholism too, just hopelessly alcoholic, but addicted to alcohol, to drugs, and therefore you end up exhausting all options, and you end up sleeping under a bridge. 20% say, the Cato people say, they're tramps, hobos. They've chosen to be homeless because, that's whatever, that's the way their brains work. And they've decided, well, I'm going to go live under a bridge. I'm going to be, a hobo out of an episode of the Andy Griffith Show or something. And that about 10% are actually people that had regular jobs and regular lives, and then everything became disastrous, the career, the work, the family. About 10% are actually out of luck. Things went really badly for them, and they ended up homeless. But 40% crazy, 30% addicted, 20% have chosen it, and 10% really down on their luck and hard situation. And that's terrible. But in Washington, there are a lot of homeless people, and they're everywhere. And for the most part, what you have here is crazy and addicted. That's what you have here, overwhelmingly in my experience. Now, the people in Battle Creek, Michigan, they've got a story on this because there are homeless people in Michigan, as it turns out. And News 3, Battle Creek, Michigan, they've got a story. City leaders and homelessness advocates. Do homelessness advocates advocate for homelessness? Because that's kind of what it says, isn't it? City leaders and homelessness advocates across West Michigan are reacting with caution to a new executive order signed by President Donald Trump that is aimed at reshaping how the nation addresses homelessness. Well, we're not doing anything to address homelessness now, and we haven't for decades. So anything at all might be considered progress. There was an old movie called The Snake Pit. Who was that? Somebody, a big actress. And I think she was schizophrenic or something, and they threw her in a mental institution. And it was such an awful, terrible mental institution and the movie laid this out. Who was it? It wasn't Olivia de Havilland. Oh, was it? It was Olivia de Havilland in The Snake Pit, 1948 or something like that? Okay, 1948. Well, and Olivia de Havilland thrown in a mental institution. It was so awful, and the treatment was so terrible that Americans rose up and said, we can't be throwing people in mental institutions. And over time, we started throwing people out on the street instead. Mental cases, drug addicted, can't take care of themselves. I know, let's push them out the door, then they're not our problem. But that's not true, of course. Then they are our problem. And just a matter of humanity and our fellow man, humankind and a civilized society and all of that. But pay no attention to that. The Snake Pit. Now, what the left, and that means the news media and the Democrat Party, what the left are advocating is maintaining the status quo. And the status quo is we throw mentally ill people out in the street until they murder somebody, and then we throw them in a government prison or mental institution from which there is no escape. But then we let them go anyway. And then they stab everybody at a Walmart in Michigan, and then we arrest them. Because that's what, and I've been talking about this for years. I have been talking about this for years, that this is not a solution for mental illness. It's not a solution for homelessness. It is the most inhumane, most ridiculous non-solution that we've adopted. And President Trump says that he wants to reshape how the nation addresses homelessness. Now, the people in Battle Creek, Michigan, in the news media, they say, the order, titled Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Streets, calls for a crackdown on homeless encampments and prioritizes public safety and they put public safety in quotation marks, by removing unhoused individuals from public spaces, mentally ill, drug-addicted people, placing them in mental health and addiction treatment, or in some cases, enforcing legal consequences. Well, wait a minute. So crazy people shouldn't be thrown into mental health institutions because we do such a bad job of operating them. Shouldn't put them in addiction treatment because, what the hell? They're legalizing heroin. And where are they legalizing? They're legalizing heroin Mamdani wants to do that in New York City, for one thing. Or in some cases, enforcing legal consequences. For what? Well, after they break the law, then we bring them to court and we convict them and we put them in prison. That's not a solution for homelessness, right? While supporters say the order offers new funding and tools to cities overwhelmed by rising homelessness, critics argue it could criminalize poverty. No, I don't think so. And undermine proven solutions. They put the word proven in quotation marks because they're completely ridiculous. Battle Creek Mayor Mark Benke told News Channel 3 that the city's homeless population has risen sharply in recent years, and he will respect the president's order, especially if it brings more resources to the city. Give me the money. Show me the money. Now, I was reading this, and I was marveling because the news media all over the place, they say that homelessness has been skyrocketing since when? Since when, Michael? Since 2017. Wait a minute. What happened in 2017? Oh, yeah. Donald Trump was inaugurated as president of the United States. And the Democrats, they want to pick 2017 as the year that homelessness started skyrocketing because they're lunatics, because they're mentally ill. They should be homeless. Man, oh man. So the 2017 number is the number that the media has chosen. Now we have two sound bites on this. They're from the Panhandler Broadcasting System, suckling on the taxpayer teat. PBS, and they've got a woman named Lisa Desjardins, and she's talking to a Washington Post reporter, because it's a circle fest in a hot tub. And they're for maintaining the status quo because Trump suggested that we do something about homelessness. If they're mentally ill, maybe a mental institution is better than sleeping on the sidewalk. If they're drug addicted, maybe a drug addiction program is better than sleeping on the sidewalk, where you don't have an income, so you don't have food, so you have to beg and steal. I could build borrow in there, but that doesn't really apply. You have to beg and steal, and your drug addiction's not being addressed, your mental illness is not being addressed. Your neighborhood, or maybe it's my neighborhood, goes to hell because the crazy drug-addicted homeless people screaming at 5 o'clock in the morning at the top of their lungs. And the solution is leave them there. Someday they'll die, and then an ambulance will come and scrape up their dead body off the sidewalk. But here's PBS Lisa Desjardins.
President Trump's order lays out his goal clearly. He wants to move more people who are homeless into long-term institutions and hospitals, including involuntarily. He also plans a dramatic shift in federal funds, away from programs that place people into housing first, and instead pushing for tougher, immediate requirements for treatment. Homeless rates have been steadily rising since 2017.
Oh, wait a minute, 2017? What a coincidence. What was happening under Obama? Was homelessness going down? Was it holding steady? And why 2017? They never explain. They just say 2017. The Democrat mayor of Alexandria, Virginia, here's the National Panhandler radio headline. Trump's homelessness executive order is, quote, cruel, end quote, says Alexandria, Virginia mayor. Oh, and here's a picture of people sleeping under a bridge with stolen bicycles and stolen bags of groceries and given away clothes, and somebody gave these two guys tents. Alexandria, Virginia Mayor Aaliyah Gaskins, said, not noted as a Democrat, says President Trump's executive order to remove homeless people off the streets is, quote, cruel, end quote, and takes a, quote, callous command and control approach. A callous command and control approach. And your compassionate approach is to leave them to die under a bridge, and then you go scrape up their dead bodies, because that's the Democrat plan. It requires states and cities like mine to demonstrate aggressive enforcement, Gaskins told Morning Edition. It ends support for housing first policies. How's that working out? Because that's what you guys have been doing. And now you're telling me homelessness has skyrocketed under your plan. skyrocketed under your plan, but only since 2017, because everything is political with these gutter snipes. I'm going to call them gutter snipes because that's polite. It ends support for housing first policies. It encourages the expanded use of law enforcement. Oh, no, not law enforcement. All at a time when we know the criminalization of homelessness doesn't work. It's not criminalization of homelessness. It's not leaving mentally ill people on the street to die. It's not leaving drug-addicted people on the corner to steal and rob and hit people over the head and then to eventually die, which is the Democrat Party's plan. And he's offering money and solutions, and you immediately oppose it. Now, PBS, Panhandler Broadcasting System, Lisa Desjardins, with a Democrat Washington Post reporter in a hot tub.
You know, I spoke to a man who's almost 80 who's experiencing homelessness now, has for a long time, who's also dealt with serious mental illness, as we're talking about. And he said he just does not think there's room in the system, in the hospitals, in shelters, for these kinds of populations. What do we know about that?
So he's 80 years old. He's been mentally ill for a long time. He's on the street, and your response is, Trump bad. You bad. You leave man on street to die. Aren't you an amazing Sacagawea? And I love this story, too, from Fix Homelessness. That's the website. They want to fix it. They just don't know how. They're liberals. Washington State, the state of Washington, spends $143 million to get 126 out of homelessness. Now, Jay Inslee, the Democrat mayor, is asking for more. So wait a minute. 126 people out of homelessness for $143 million, well over $1 million per person. Isn't that amazing? And they consider this to be the good work. All right, let's grab a phone call, Michael. Let's go. And then I really want to get to the weather because, you know, it's kooky. Let's go to Wendy calling from West Virginia, Virginia. Wendy, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris, thank you so much for taking my call. I have worked in the mental health field for 36 years and with the homeless population for 20 years. You and President Trump are absolutely 100% right, and I have been screaming about these issues for the past 20 years. You are absolutely right in that people have been basically tossed to the streets out of the hospitals. Do you recall back in the 80s, it was actually both Reagan and the Democrat Congress that changed policies where people would not be held for decades in hospitals. And instead, they opened up residential programs, and that's where I stepped into my career, was that I was working in residential programs where we received people from the hospitals. And so that first generation did very well going into residential programs. But what happened was people who were mentally ill who came in later, they didn't have that. They didn't go into the hospital. They didn't go into there wasn't enough room in the residential programs, and then the Section 8 programs began to be filled up, of course, with immigration, because our immigration policies were changing over time, and so we just had no housing for people who were experiencing mental illness and having housing issues and income issues, and so in this situation with Housing First, one thing I want to say about that, I know that perhaps there must be some pockets of places in the country where Housing First must be successful, but by golly, in the areas that I have worked, it has been a total bull crap, because I have so many people who just never get to see housing. And so we have people who remain on the streets for years and can't get into housing because it doesn't exist for them.
Right.
And, and it just goes on and on and on. And I've had people die. I have known many people who have passed away, whose lives ended as homeless people.
Yeah.
And this has to change. And exactly what Donald Trump is saying, the way that it has to change, is exactly what I've been screaming about for the past 20 years. And I'm sorry that some liberals are saying that, oh, no, Orange Man bad, but it's not that what he's saying is the wrong way of doing it. It's because he's the one who's saying it.
That's exactly right, 100% right. You're right again, Wendy. You're always right. We've never spoken before, but I know that Wendy's always right. That is great. I'm right. You're right. Donald Trump is right. And every liberal, as usual, is wrong. $143 million to get 126 people out of homelessness. That's the Democrat plan. That's your money. Better get back to work. All right, I've got the weather coming up. The weather, fake news, fake weather, fake sports from the Democrats.
I want everybody to go home. And I want...
We don't got no home. Okay. That's why we're here.
Little aqualung. You don't get aqualung every day. Sitting on a park bench. Snot is running down his nose. Greasy fingers smearing shabby clothes. Bum, 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 bum. All right, I want to talk about the weather for a minute. I brought my Washington Post in with me today because they have the weather posted on page B20. And today's weather predicts, they call it AccuWeather, ironically, 98 degrees and mostly sunny. But it has a real feel of 109 degrees. That's almost 110 degrees. Isn't that amazing? And on Fox News, they had their weatherman on today, Adam Klotz, and he said this.
You're looking at a huge swath of the country with at least some sort of heat alert up and down the East Coast, back across the Gulf of America, up into the Midwest, and across portions of the plains. All areas where we're talking about obscenely warm temperatures. These are feels like, so it's the heat plus the humidity, 110, 111 in Savannah, 109 in Jackson, 110 in Memphis. So a lot of spots getting at least up to triple digits. That continues for today. It continues into tomorrow as well.
Now, don't believe, here's what the news media is telling us, the Washington Post and Fox News and everybody else, local news too. Don't believe your thermometer anymore. Throw your thermometers out because the heat index, the Democrats, they politicized weather and the temperature. They want you to believe it's hotter. So now they're not even giving the normal temperature. Just it's going to be 109. No, it's not. It's going to be 98. But your thermometer is off by 11 degrees.